What's up guys, Coach Az here. Now, let me start by saying if you've clicked on this video in a rage because you've seen the title, I am not here to bash kata, pumse, forms, whatever you want to call it, whatever your chosen martial art is. I am here to give some, I wouldn't even call them hard truths, but some truths about what this stuff is, what it's good for, and what it's not. So if you're ready, let's get it started. To be clear and transparent from the start, I'm coming at this as someone who holds a black belt in traditional Wado-ryu karate and who practices kata regularly. So when I refer to it as useless, I mean that in a very utilitarian approach in the sense of how useful it is in teaching you how to fight. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to refer to everything, whether it be kata, pumse, forms, whatever you call it, I'm going to refer to it in this video as kata. For anyone who doesn't know what it is, effectively it's a sequence of moves that are put together in a specific order and practiced. There are often between 10 and 15 katas or forms per style, whether it be again karate, taekwondo, kung fu. You'll see it in a lot of different traditional martial art disciplines. These are very ancient practices, so the true origins of them are pretty hazy. But what we can definitely derive and what is pretty clear is it was a way of teaching and passing on knowledge before things like books were readily available. You've got to imagine a time where knowledge was at a premium. So if you were extremely rich, then you could afford to have scrolls and books. But for the majority of people, reading wasn't even a thing. The ability to write or read wasn't a thing. So this is how knowledge was passed from one generation to the next. We're also talking about a time before things like boxing gloves or punch bags or focus mitts would have been invented. So in terms of ways that you would practice martial arts, practicing solo and kicking and punching thin air, that was about as good as it got. And if you didn't have a partner, if you didn't have someone to work with on a daily basis, then this is how you could train at home on your own. So what kata was a really effective way of passing on a lot of knowledge in a very compact space. You could teach a lot of techniques, stances and principles within a kata and pass that on to your student, who could then go on and teach others as well as train it and rehearse it on their own. But let's be really clear about what it is not. It is not intended to replicate a fight, and this is where things start to go really wrong for kata. I've heard instructors constantly telling their students to imagine opponents as they go through their kata. Imagine someone coming from the left, then someone comes from the right, then another guy in front of you, and it becomes like a bad kung fu movie. Now, certain sequences I'm sure are intended as combinations or as ideas and concepts that you could string together, but I don't think the idea ever was to imagine that you're being attacked by a group of people and this is the sequence of moves that you would use to defend yourself. I believe another part of the issue stems from the idea of it being taught from one generation to the next, and the issue being that things get changed and things get manipulated, and then there's a lack of depth in terms of the knowledge. You see this in modern day where people will, for example, see a block motion and they think the idea is to block, a sword, a metal pipe, a wooden pole, a punch, but its origins are probably something closer to putting in an armbar. But it gets lost in translation, and for simplicity's sake we say high block, we say low block. But in terms of where the actual origins of that movement come and what it's meant to depict, it's not quite right. Now, my statement at the beginning was that it's not good for fighting. And it's not. The reason being is it's too rigid, it's too set in its way, and it hasn't evolved. It hasn't moved forward. The kata that you would have learned 50 years ago is the same kata that you would learn today. And martial arts in that time has evolved massively. If you take into consideration especially the evolution and the birth of mixed martial arts, it's now gone far further than what it ever was. Back in the day, if you knew what a reverse punch was, you were at a huge advantage in hand-to-hand combat. If you knew how to correctly close a fist and throw a punch and rotate your body into it, you were better than 99% of people if it was a fight with just your hands. These days, everyone and their mother has done some kind of kickboxing, karate, taekwondo, a little bit of martial arts. So the ability to just know how to throw a punch and the value that holds for you as a fighter has been diminished. You get good at fighting by fighting. You get good at fighting by regularly sparring, by working on sparring based drills, by getting involved in combat with another person. This is how you get better at it, not at kicking and punching thin air. Even if you just trained on bags or on focus mitts, this would not make you a great fighter. We see it all the time where people come new to martial arts, or we see a celebrity doing it. They look great on the pads, they look great on a punch bag, and then you put them in there with someone else and all of that deteriorates and falls apart because it doesn't directly translate. And even more so, a bag is pretty close because at least you're hitting something. Maybe it swings and it moves. It in some way replicates an opponent. But kata, being a solo activity and being set stringent movements in a specific order, it just simply doesn't translate to the chaos that is combat. But as I said, I still regularly practice my kata. So let's talk about some of its benefits, some of the good things, some of the reasons that you might want to take it on or continue to practice it if you do already. The main focus of any forms is going to be on the technique and the stances. So what it really does is it brings a very intense focus into yourself in terms of how you perform the technique, how your feet are placed, how low you are in terms of your body, how rotated your shoulders are. And this intense focus for me is almost like an active meditation. So if you really struggle with the idea of sitting silently in a room, crossing your legs and clearing your mind, because every time you try and clear your mind, stuff just flows on in, I found that activities such as yoga, tai chi, and forms, kata, really help me to clear my mind whilst moving my body. I've never really bought into yoga too much. When people start talking about opening their chakras and opening themselves up to the sun, it loses me. I can't really focus on things like that. But when we're talking about kicks and punches, something I'm very familiar with, something I really enjoy doing, and we're putting that into a sequence, it changes for me. So if you like the idea of doing some form of yoga more as an active rest or some kind of thing to do on your downtime, for me, kata is a great martial art based alternative. Like, I'm obsessed with martial arts. So if I'm not kickboxing, if I'm not striking a bag, if I'm not sparring with my guys, then you probably find me watching videos of people fighting, creating YouTube content for people who fight, or practicing kata. There's also something to be said for the group environment. Now, again, you can replicate this in any martial art. If you've ever been in a room where everyone's training really hard, they're all focused and working towards one goal, that energy is a great energy to vibe off of. And it's kind of amplified when you practice kata with other people. When you're all practicing the same form and you're moving ideally in sequence through the same set of movements, that brings a wonderful energy to a room. And it's something I recommend you experience at some point. Alright, so who do I believe that kata is for? Who do I think should be practicing it and partaking in it? I'll give myself as an example. I am now a retired fighter. I am a full-time coach, so I don't fight anymore. I spar very rarely, and that rarity is only going to increase as I get older. My training intensity has lowered. I train to make sure that I stay in shape, to make sure that I can demonstrate for my students, but it's nowhere where it used to be when I was actively competing. So for me, kata has been a really nice supplement to my training. It also gives me something to continue to learn and work on. I can go on to other styles, I can practice other forms, other techniques, and it allows me to continue feeding my curiosity for martial arts. Now, if you're actively competing, whether that be in any martial art, I don't recommend that you put too much time or energy into things like kata. Focus on developing your craft. Focus on working on what you need to do. Like I said, you get good at fighting by fighting. So don't start going around and doing anything other than that. Put your intention and your focus into that for the time being. But people train martial arts for loads of different reasons. We're not all here to become world champions. We're not all here to defend ourselves in the street. Some of us just want to learn something new, be active, use our bodies, move around, and just engage with something. And that is what kata is great for. It's very low impact. It's not going to risk any damage to you physically. You're not getting hit in the head. You're not getting struck in the body. But it allows you to move around, practice, and learn something new. Alright guys, I hope this video has been helpful. I hope I haven't offended any of you traditional martial artists too much. I am one of you. Please don't take it the wrong way. Please comment below what you think about Kata if you still practice it. Let me know what you want to see on the next video. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.